in the middle, more towards the beginning of chapter 2. And what we've done so far in the chapter is established that the soul is like nothing else in all of creation. Why is the soul like nothing else in all creation? Because the rest of creation is spoken into existence. Spoken meaning it's an external level of God's energy. The soul is his breath from the insides, from the inner dimension of God. But then we said, no, it's much more than his breath. It's actually him. The soul and God are one because the soul comes from God's thoughts. And just as by God, not by us, but by God, he and his thoughts are one, as is expressed both in the inner dimension of Torah, Zohar, Kabbalah, and in the revealed dimension of Torah, Maimonides, God and his thoughts are one. So if the soul comes from the thoughts of God, which we know because we are the child of God, and a child comes from the brain of the Father. So if the soul comes from the thoughts of God, God and the soul, not just an intimate dimension, not just more one with than the rest of creation. No, the soul and God are one. And that leads to what we're now going to discuss, which is a question we can have on this. What question would we have? Wait a minute. The Rebbe has done such a beautiful job convincing me, explaining, elaborating, clarifying with lots of very systematic thought processes how high the soul is, how the essence of soul is one with the very essence of God itself. So my thought is, wait a minute. If the soul is so high, well, that doesn't just mean my soul. That means everyone's soul. If everyone's soul is so high, how come we look so different? How come it doesn't always look that way? How come it looks like, well, some people are very spiritual and holy, but some Jews don't see it that way. But yet we all come from this intense source of not just intimate, but literally one with God. How can we all look so different and so far from that? So that's the question the Rebbe is now going to develop. Before he answers the question, he first really structures the question, meaning he first really creates a very good case for the question, and then he gives us the answer. So if we're looking inside, and again, we are so excited to be learning this on the 19th of Kislev. The 19th of Kislev is the day that we mark the Alter Rebbe's release from prison and really vindication of the Tanya. As we discussed when we learned the introduction, this incarceration of the Rebbe was a year after the Tanya was printed, and the 53 chapters of Tanya created the 53 days of imprisonment. And when the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, was in prison, his teacher, the Maggid of Mezrich, and his teacher, the Baal Shem Tov, came and visited him in prison, souls and bodies. They both passed long time before, but life is eternal, and they came in bodies that it should really impact the physicality of the world. And first, the Baal Shem Tov asked him to give over a Torah, which he did, a discourse that the Baal Shem Tov had nachas from. And then, this is, of course, the essence question we all always wonder about everything in our life, right? We probably wonder this multiple times a day. Why? But why? So the Alter Rebbe said to his teacher, meaning his spiritual father and grandfather, why? Why am I here? And they said, for spreading Hasidus. That's why you're here. He said, well, if I'm here for spreading Hasidus, then God willing, when I get out, should I stop? They said, no. When you get out, spread even more. Meaning there was a court case going on for real, where everything is real, up there. Court case against the intense spreading of Hasidus that the Tanya specifically caused, taking the secrets of God and making it something intellectually understandable to people with minds like ours. For that, how dare you? How dare you take God's inner secrets and make them something a human brain can comprehend? But when you get out, that means we won. That means we're vindicated. That means this approach is the approach that will create the redemption. So do it more. In essence, Yud-Tes Kislev is about Tanya. It's about Hasidus. It's about Bring Mashiach. And it's about Tanya as, at that time, the bold, audacious teachings of God's inner secrets that now the world can understand. So I really think we're very blessed that the class came out on Yud Kislev. And it's also on Tuesday, this year, Tuesday, Yud Kislev, as the original freedom and celebration was on a Tuesday. And we're actually, if we want to pick the best night possible, it's now, because this night between the 19th and the 20th was really the night of his release, much more so than last night. I thought that would have been pretty good too. So we're very, very excited, or I'm very excited to be studying Tanya right now. So we're going to be looking inside as the Alter Rebbe in great detail is fleshing out the question. Once we understand the question, which has a lot of details, but it's all one essence question, then we'll go to the answer. Towards the bottom of page Vav, third to the last of the small little lines. And even though there are tens of thousands of levels of soul, higher and higher infinitely, for example, like the enormity, the holiness of the souls of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Moshe and Moses. In contrast to our souls, the souls of our generation. Not when the Alter Rebbe wrote this some 200 years ago. We got a lot lower. Our generation, the heels of the heels of the heels of the coming of Mashiach. Which is literally like the head versus the heel. The patriarchs and Moses, that's the head. We're the heels. That's one level expressing the question. And similarly, in every generation, we have heads and heels. Yesh Roshei Alfei Yisrael. There are the heads of the thousands of the Jews. The term Rebbe, right? We use that term a lot, is an acrostic. Rosh B'nai Yisrael, the head of the Jewish people. So we've got souls that are the head. And of course, we have the rest. We've got those souls that are like the head, the brains, in contrast to the heels, to the common people, all within a generation. And then the third expression of this question, and it's not just on the level of soul, because the soul itself breaks down to 5 levels. Even on the lowest level, action. Well, surely an action we're the same. I put a coin in the charity box and anyone else doesn't, it's the same act. No, not exactly. An action-oriented soul versus action-oriented soul. Because every soul is comprised of these 3, and really, of course, 5 levels. Okay, so let me review how the Rebbe sketched out the question. Again, the core question we're trying to understand is, if we totally accept and integrate and understand everything the Rebbe is saying, we don't understand then. How does it seem that souls are so different when, based on what the Rebbe is saying, every single soul comes from the core of God himself? And that's true. So how come some souls look so vast and some souls look much smaller? So before answering the question, the Rebbe really wants to validate the question, which is very stylistic of the Alter Rebbe and Tanya, and of course, our Rebbe in countless talk. So there are 3 dimensions where the Rebbe is showing us this par, seemingly, between souls. The first of the 3 examples was between generations. And we're making body-like comparisons. And we're saying the first Jews, great souls, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moses, Aaron, Moshe, Aaron, David, Solomon, David, Shlomo, they are like the head of the Jewish people, and we are like the heel. And what do we come up with, a head and a heel? What do we mean by this? Well, what we mean is that all Jews form one body. Truly, all souls of all times form the body of the Jewish people. We're all one unit together. We're all one body, one organism. The organism called Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people. And in a body, there's specialized parts, right? You've got higher functioning and lower functioning. You've got interdependency. You've got unity, but you also have higher and lower aspects. And if we look at all Jews throughout all time, we have those great, great souls. They're the head of the Jewish people. And then every generation it gets a little weaker, a little weaker, a little weaker until you come bottom, 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 bottom of the body, the heels. And that's us. The head, those souls, where are they now? They're in what we call the world of Atzilus, higher than Gan Eden, meaning there are two dimensions to Gan Eden. There's Gan Eden in the spiritual world of Yetzirah, the world of formation for the majority of the Jews. And then there's a higher Gan Eden in the world of Bria, in the world of creation for holy Jews. And we're told every Shabbos, every Rosh Chodesh, and every holiday, the souls all are able to ascend from the lower Gan Eden to the higher Gan Eden. So those are really happy days for the souls. If you're thinking of someone you love on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh, on Yontif, it's really great. But then there are souls higher than Gan Eden, the patriarchs, the matriarchs. As I said, Moshe, Aaron, David, Shlomo, the greatest, greatest, greatest souls. Gan Eden's too small for them. They're in Atzilus. They're in the world of being. They're higher than Gan Eden. And those are the heads of the organism of Klal Yisrael, the body of the entirety of the Jewish people. And every generation, though the head of the generation actually gets stronger and stronger, because he has to pick us up, the body gets lower and lower until we come to the final generations before the coming of Mashiach, until the final generation of the coming of Mashiach. And our sages have a special term for us, Ikvisa de Mashiach. That's Aramaic, which means the heels of the coming of Mashiach. We're the bottom. We're the heels. Of course, the heel implies not sensitive, right? You could stick your heel in the hot water before anything else. It's not going to burn the same. Not very spiritually inspired. Our heels are not so spiritually inspired. Well, that's us. We're not so sensitive. We're not so spiritual. At the same time, of course, the heel has tremendous strengths, as we do. As a generation, we do. The heels are the support of the entire body. The heels represent accepting the yoke of authority of God, Kabbalah's Ol, nullification to God, Bittul, self-sacrifice for God, Mesiras Nefesh. All of this is heel-like qualities because the heels go where the body wants. So the heels take the body wherever the body wants to go. And the heels can go in fire and water and ice and snow and whatever it is, wherever the body wants, that's where the heels are going to go. And the heels lift up the body, right? It says about Moses, about Moshe, he's in the midst of 600,000 pairs of feet. Well, that's a nice way to describe us. No, he meant it that he's Moses, but he's lifted up by the 600,000 legs of the Jewish people because they lift up the head of the Jews, Moses. So that's the heel. We're the support. We go wherever we got to. We do whatever we have to. We're not so spiritual. We're not so understanding. Many talks, the Rebbe discusses this concept of us as the heels. The Rebbe says we're sleepwalkers, sleep talkers. We don't know. We don't really understand. We don't really feel. In the times of the temple, they understood and they felt and they saw, and we don't understand and we don't feel and we don't see, but we have the strength of the heel. We have the strength of absolute nullification and self-sacrifice to God. And those are the strengths that are bringing Mashiach. But getting back to the question here, the Rebbe is saying, how can it be that all of our souls come from the very thoughts of God, his very self, when some souls look like the head? Well, that makes sense. They emerge from the thoughts of God. They should be a head, but then some of us look like heels. So first we said that intergenerationally. The second example the Rebbe gave to support this question is within a generation. Within a generation, we have the holy Jews that are the heads of the generation. As I said, the term Rebbe, right? We use that to refer to the leader of the generation. Rebbe is an acrostic. It's 3 Hebrew words. Rosh B'nai Yisrael. Again, I don't have a board, and I don't know if it's clear, but the word Rebbe has 3 Hebrew letters, Resh, Beis, Yud. And each of those letters stand for a word. So 3 letters, 3 words. Resh, Beis, Yud, Rebbe, Rosh B'nai Yisrael. Rebbe means the head of the Jewish people. The head of the Jewish people, not per se of all times, that too probably, but within the generation, there's the body of the Jewish people, and the Rebbe is the head. And other great, great, holy, holy Jews, they're also up there. And then there's very common Jews, very simple Jews, not learned, not in a godly environment, perhaps not even aware they're Jewish. How many Jews are in the world today and are clueless that they're Jewish? They might say, yeah, I got a little Jewish blood. What's your little Jewish blood? Oh, my mother's mother. Little bit. 1/16. No, your mother's. Well, actually, I need one more generation to make it 1/16. 1/8. You're not half Jewish. You're not a quarter Jewish. You're not an eighth Jewish. You're not a 16th Jewish. You're 100% a Jew. And you don't even know. So this Jew who doesn't even know they're Jewish, and that head of the Jewish people, well, we're making up the organism, Klal Yisrael Incorporated, the body of the Jewish people of this generation. And again, the body means we're interconnected. The body means we're interdependent. The body means we're all one. We're united. We form one organism. And the body means we have higher and lower parts. We have specialized functions. And there's the function of thought. There's the souls that are the eyes, the souls that are the ears, and there's the souls that are the fingernails, that are the toenails. We're all one. We're all interconnected. We're all interdependent, but some are clearly far higher than others. But how can this be when every soul comes from the essence of God himself? The third dimension the Rebbe brings to flesh out this question is, even on the level of nefesh, the Rebbe says there's a difference. And what does the Rebbe mean by even on the level of nefesh? So as I tried to explain briefly as I was reading it, soul has 5 levels. Nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida. Yechida, the highest level, is our spiritual energy of pleasuring God. That's the deepest, most powerful expression of the soul. The next level, chaya, is the will. From that deep pleasure comes the will to do those things, to attain the pleasure, to become one with God. And the next level, the neshama, is the thoughts. We think, we conceptualize, we understand, we connect mentally. And then there's the ruach, our speech, our feelings, our emotions for God. Now, all of these levels sound and are very nuanced, very spiritual. So we can totally comprehend that if I was expressing my pleasure for God, or will for God, or intellectual understanding of God, or love or fear or awe of God, obviously me and a head of the Jewish people, a tzaddik, a very holy Jew, obviously it's going to look quite different. But that final 5th level of soul, nefesh, is action. Putting that coin in the charity box, checking that this is not a mixture of wool and linen, separating the meat and the milk, making sure the outfit covers the collarbones and the knees, putting on the tefillin, lighting the Shabbos candles. Actions. Well, in an action, you'd say, there we should be the same. I'm doing an action and the holiest Jew is doing an action. The action is the action, right? Not the intention, not the thoughts, not the feelings, but the action is the action. And the Rebbe says, wrong. When a very holy Jew does that exact same physical action, we're not talking about the level of feeling. That's a different level of soul. We're not talking about the thought and intentions. That's a different level of soul. We're talking about literally the action, the nefesh dimension. It's different. The nefesh of the tzaddik, the nefesh of that very holy Jew is different than the nefesh of that very common Jew. So then how can this all be? If I thought like a few minutes ago, isn't that true? Don't we all come from the same source? That's what the Rebbe said. The Rebbe proved. The soul of the Jew is not creation. It's quasi-creator. The soul of the Jew is from the highest level of the highest world. Seminal wisdom of the world of being, Chachma Vatzilus. The soul of the Jew, the core of the soul of the Jew comes from the core of God himself, right? We discussed this last week. That do we make a difference to God or not? And we said through the 4 spiritual worlds, we do. Right? Through what we call Seder Hishtalshlus, the progression of worlds, we do. Higher than Seder Hishtalshlus, higher than the progression of Atzilus, Bria, Yitzia, Asiya, higher than these worlds of Tikkun, of rectification. We don't. It's too high and we're too small. Our good and our bad are irrelevant. But then we said in the very essence and being of God, we do. Because that's where we come from. That's who we are. So there our actions do make a difference. So how does all that jive with what we're just saying now, where we see within souls there's such differentiation? How can there be such differentiation if down to last class we all come to the same level? So that's the question. Any thoughts, any questions on the question? I am going to explain the answer before we read it inside, and then I'll read it and then we'll explain more. To answer the question, the Rebbe gives a metaphor, a parable. And it's a good parable because it makes the answer very clear. So I'll start with briefly expressing the parable and then decoding the parable, decontextualizing it, and saying, what does all this mean? So the parable is the development of a child. And the Rebbe says, I'm again saying this briefly, that the child starts from a little bit of sperm that fertilized an egg, right? Tiny, tiny little drop. And as we discussed, that little bit of sperm starts in the brain of the father. There's a pituitary gland in the brain that releases, excretes a hormone from which is developed the sperm, which fertilizes teensy tiny egg, which becomes a human being. But how do you get a human being from that fertilized egg? Well, as we all know, that egg is implanted in the womb of the mother. And over the 9 months, that egg develops and develops and develops and develops. And of course, first we have the highest organisms, the highest parts of the body, like the brain, the lungs, the heart, and then less significant parts, and then less significant parts. And it keeps developing and developing and developing. And the baby should, God willing, stay full term in the body, and it can come out with hair and nails. And maybe if the baby was born a little early, it will come out without hair or nails, because those will be the last of the last of the last things to develop. Hair, nails, eyelashes, right? The last of the last. So when we're looking here, the Rebbe says, wow, we have a great metaphor for our question, because we see that originally every part of this human being came from one drop that really, if we trace it back, goes back to the brain of the father. But over the course of 9 months in the womb, the drop differentiated. The drop developed, and some parts became brain matter, which is what they were originally. So that wasn't a great change. And some parts became heart, and some parts became lung. And then other parts developed, and then other parts developed, and then other parts developed. And the longer it goes, the lower and lower and lower the parts. We get skin, which is the largest organism of our body. We said you can even get hair and eyelashes and nails, but everything down to the nails of the child, all originally were part of that drop that goes back, the antecedent of that, the brain of the father. There's a second part to the answer, but I just want to give the basic answer now. When we read it and we develop and then decode it more, we'll see that there's really an additional level the Rebbe is saying here. For now, I'm just trying to overview the basic answer. So what's my answer? Well, the Rebbe said, that's us. All souls start off as brain matter, that original drop, that seminal drop. That's all of our souls. Every soul starts off the brain of the Father, Chachma Vatzila, seminal wisdom of the world of being. And then they travel. Just as that baby, that fetus, the drop is differentiating, the drops are developing into various aspects that become a human being, the souls start differentiating. They all start off the same. Brain matter of the Father, brain matter of God, seminal wisdom of the world of being, Chachma Vatzilos. But then every soul is differentiated for its specific job, for its specific task. Just like every part of the fetus differentiates for its specific task. Is this going to become an eye that will see, an ear that will hear? Will this be the formation of what will become teeth? Will this be bone matter, joint matter, cartilage, veins, sinews? Every part has to become part of to make this functioning human being. All these parts have to be, and some are higher, some are lower. Yeah, but we need every bit to make a healthy human being. Can't where I say bones. Like, who wants to be a bone matter? Well, you got to have bones to have a human being. So every part, every soul has its job to do to create the body of the Jewish people. And some jobs look more glamorous. They do. Some people look like they have more glamorous, I'm using the word glamorous loosely, but more glamorous positions in life, more prestige, however you want to view it. But we need every part. We need every one. We need every drop. So every soul has to differentiate from beginning as brain to be that aspect of body, Klal Yisrael. That soul's job into, as we said, that one organism, totally one, totally interdependent, totally fused, and each aspect with its own very specialized, very nuanced, what that soul is doing in this world. And how does the soul differentiate? By traveling through the world. And every soul is given an exact address, exactly how far that soul travels, and the exact distance of the journey, and the exact final destination of the journey is what's determining the abilities of the soul and reflecting what part of the body of Jewish people is this soul's function. So that is, in brief, the answer. Again, we're going to read inside the metaphor, the development of the child, and then the Alter Rebbe unpacking that with his answer to his question that could have been our question. How can we all be from the same source when we all look so very, very different? We're on page 12, 6 lines from the top, last word of the line. Become a comb. Nevertheless, meaning, yes, I made a great case to question how could it be that all souls are the same when they sure look different when they arrive in planet Earth? But guess what? Nevertheless, they are. The source of every soul and every level of soul. As I said, it's not just the soul in entirety, it's in each of its 5 levels. From the highest level to the lowest level, so low that the Rebbe is not writing it in Hebrew, he's writing it in Aramaic, foreign language. The souls that descended so low because they're vivifying the bodies of what are called the lowest of the low, the most common people of body, Jewish people. Nimshach mimoyach ha'elyon. Well, you know what? That Jew that you don't value, he comes from God's thoughts. That Jew that you think so highly of, that Jew who's so holy, and that Jew who you look down on, they both come from God's thoughts. Nothing in creation comes from the thought of God except the Jew. And it's not the nicer Jews, the holier Jews, the kinder Jews, the closer to God Jews. Every single Jew comes from God's thoughts. Every single one of us. Never look down on a Jew. You're looking down on God's only child. So we ask this question. What's going on? Every single Jew, every single soul, all from God's very thoughts, from God's very being, from God's very self. What's going on? So the Rebbe continues. Kivyachol. Oh, sorry, I was thinking. Every single soul, the Rebbe says, I'm guaranteeing you, every single soul comes from the supernal brain of God, from seminal wisdom, from the highest level of the highest world, and really far beyond that. Meaning in Tanya, of course, Tanya is this foundational work of Chabad Hasidus. As we said, Tanya is a celebration of the 19th of Kislev, but there's far higher levels that we don't usually talk about in Tanya. Meaning Tanya is not philosophy. It's not theology. Our goal in Tanya is not to become philosophers, theologians. No. Tanya is about being a Jew and serving God. And as such, we generally speak about God within the worlds of our reality, as I call it, like our solar system. So we know the solar system. We've got, as Torah says, circling around planet Earth. We've got the sun. We've got Mars, Jupiter, Neptune, Venus, whatever. We're so knowledgeable. We know the planets in our little winkle, in our little corner of the Milky Way galaxy. There's myriads of planets. Well, we don't know them. They're not part of our solar system. They're far from us. They're irrelevant to us. So in our spiritual solar system, We've got those four worlds from top to bottom: Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. The world of being, the world of creation, the world of formation, the world of action, and then our physical reality, the physical manifestation of the world of action, Asiya Gashmis. And then beyond that, we talk about the world of Tohu and Shviras HaKelim, which we discussed recently in class. The world of chaos and the shattering of the vessels, that the shards of that world descend into our reality. And then we know beyond that, there's lots and lots and lots and lots of levels. Where we go all the way up to Symptom Harishon, the Kav, the Halal, Atzmos Mahos, God himself. And basically in Tanya, we skip everything from like God himself till Shviras HaKelim, because it's not really relevant to our functioning work in progress. How am I a Jew who is serving God? So therefore, I'm saying this to understand the Rebbe's point, the highest level of the highest world within what's relevant to us in our solar system, what we call Seder Hishtalshalos, the progression of the four spiritual realities, the four worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiya, being, creation, formation, descent, is Chachma of Atzilus, seminal wisdom of the world of being, highest level of highest world. That's where the soul is from, the brain of God. Well, actually, the soul is enrooted in God's very essence and being way beyond any of this. But we're not really talking about that. So within the evolution of spiritual realities that we are conscious of, within the evolution of spiritual realities that relate to our self, our journey, our world, the highest level of the highest world is seminal wisdom of the world of being, is Chachma Vatzilus. That's where the soul is from. And that's true. But of course, it's really enrooted far higher in the very essence of God himself, which we don't talk about in Tanya. So therefore, we are saying here the conclusion: no Jew is small, no Jew is irrelevant, no Jew is not important, no Jew is not for you. Every single Jew comes from the brain of God, the supernal seminal wisdom, Chachma Vatzilus, and really far higher. Really the very core essence of being God himself, which is why we impact the very core essence and being of God himself. So we're up to reading, and we will stop at this point, is that mashal, the metaphor, the parable that we overviewed before of the development of a child to understand the soul's journeys and how the journeying of the soul, each one very nuanced, very case specific, leads to, in our eyes, such differentiation among the souls. There is differentiation, just like in your body, there's such differentiation. Cells are all specialized. They all have different functions, but they all start from that same point. Every soul starts from that same point, seminal wisdom of the world of being, Chachma Atzilus, and really far higher, the core of the very essence and being of God himself.